The dialogue between Christianity and Eastern religions, which is particularly strong in the United States, has its counterpart in Europe. We are going to visit three focal points of that dialogue. Father Pierre de Bethune at the monastery of Saint-André de Clerlande in Belgium, Brother Bartomeu Ubach at the Abbey of Montserrat in Spain, and Alberto Quattrucci of the community of San Egidio in Rome.
We are here in the monastery of Clerlande in Belgium, near Louvain-la-Neuve, the new University of Louvain. And this monastery exists since 25 years. And I am here since more or less 20 years. And since 7 years I am prior of this, I am in charge of this monastery. This rather small monastery, we are 25 people, 25 monks, and we try to have a very simple life because we have no habit, we have no cloister, nothing monastic in this old fashion, but we try to live according to the rule of Saint Benedict as brothers, and we walk and we pray and we can receive many people who want to pray with us. This is my life for now. I think the beginning of my real interest in dialogue came with an experience of prayer. Of course, I had the opportunity to meet with people and it was very interesting to talk, but what was most important for me was the experience that when I meditated in the way of Zen meditation, I experienced something very deep, very important for my spiritual life. And as a monk, as a Christian who always had who wanted to pray, and I believe that prayer is very important and decisive for Christian life. When I encountered this kind of, not prayer, but meditation or contemplation, it was for me a great shock, because I could do the experience of something very profound, more profound than my prayer life. My prayer life was at a more intellectual or sentimental or affective level. And when I could practice this Zen meditation, I recognized that this experience was deeper. So I said, I must have my prayer at this level. And so I continued to practice Zen meditation as a Christian. And so I could see that dialogue is really at this point. Like I said, dialogue must go until this depth. I think that since many years, I think to Father Le Sceau, who was in India since 1950, since many years, some individuals, some pioneers began to have this deep kind of dialogue. We can have some names very known, like Father Thomas Merton or Bede Griffith, but until the Vatican Council, they were alone, and they walked for their own sake, and the Church was without very great sympathy for this kind of people. After Nostra Aetate, after this decree of the Vatican Council, it was a little more open, but there was a big fear among Christians, and only very slowly they had to recognize that people like those great pioneers were good Christians, and that they opened some new ways. And I think one most important date was, of course, the day of prayer of Assisi, just 10 years ago, in 1986. Because there, for the first time, we could see people praying together, not only talking very gently, but being together as religious people, not only as politic or as social persons, but as religious persons. And I think this was the biggest step, because from this day on, it was known to everybody that there was a possibility to encounter people of other faiths at this very level of the prayer. To encounter these experiences, these individual experiences, Benedictine monks and also Trappist monks organized some commission, some committee. We began in 78, and then they organized what they then called the North American Board for East-West Dialogue. Now they call it Monastic Interfaith Dialogue Committee. And in Europe, we call it Dialogue Interreligieux Monastique, Commission pour le Dialogue Interreligieux Monastique. And this is an official organization with the Abbot Primate of the Benedictine as head. And this organization helps to reach every monastery, because I think we need some movement, not only individuals, but some movement, like we had a big movement of ecumenism since more than 50 years, like also the liturgical movement. With this kind of larger experience, not only experience of one or two or some separated individuals, but some experience of a whole community, a whole network. With such bigger experience, I think we can really have, we can make some real progress. So I am working for this Monastic Interfaith Dialogue committees to help monks and nuns to have good contact with some other monks of Asia, Buddhist or Hindu monks, and to have contact with every kind of possibilities to meet with other religious traditions. I remember mostly the first encounter of monks. We were 17 European monks who lived 1 month in Japan. And when this experience had to finish and we had to say farewell to other Japanese monks who lived with us, we were very moved. And I asked, why are we so moved? Because we had good friends, yes, of course, but it was a very profound experience on both sides. And I think it was because we recognized really that we did encounter really brothers, like lost brothers we could find after so many years. And we could recognize that we had the same aspirations, the same, what do you say, same thirst of the absolute. And that monks of every kind of religions had something essential in together. And this was this thirst of the absolute, and also that they use the same ways: silence, meditation, work, contact with the master, some sober life. All those monastic ways of, we find them also by Japanese Zen monks, and this was really maybe the most profound experience, to recognize that really we have this essential in common. Although our religion was so different, but at the, let us say, anthropological level, it was so similar. And we were very moved by this experience. Some said it was like if we had done some new novitiate, because during our novitiate we had rather hard life, very silent and very essential. And for those old monks or mature monks, it was this month in Zen monasteries was kind of novitiate, because it was, we had the experience of this fervor, of this what is central in our life is yes, fervor. You understand? And we could see how fervent how those Japanese monks were also so eager to go on their way. And, so for us it was kind of a reminder to be good monks. When we came back in our monasteries, we were really encouraged to become better Christian monks. Lastly, I could participate to some important meeting in the Vatican, because as consultor of the Pontifical Council for Dialogue among Religions, I was invited to attend a plenary assembly of this council. More or less 50 bishops and cardinals met to think, and they have this kind of assembly every 4 or 5 years. And this time it was really to think about this experience which could begin in Assisi. I mean, this experience of shared prayer. Although in Assisi they try to assist to the prayer of other religions, but practically it was a prayer done by all the faithfuls of every kind of religions together for peace. So 10 years after Assisi, they wanted to rethink it and to have some deeper thought about what was happening in this kind of dialogue. And there I had to speak about dialogue between spiritualities. And I used this very good expression of Raymond Panikkar about intra-religious dialogue. Not only inter-religious, because it is important, it is already very beautiful that we can meet and listen to each other, but if we really want to go further in this encounter, we have to let the other, the words and the questions of the other penetrate in ourselves. Dialogue, dia, logos, dia means true. So I think a good definition of dialogue is a word which is traversé, I cannot say in English. In French, une parole qui se laisse traverser par une autre parole. That means one word which is really traveled through by another word. Then it is really an intra-religious experience. Because it happens inside my religious life. It is not only outside at the door, but in my inner spiritual life. This kind of intra-religious dialogue is also something dangerous, because it is like letting come some stranger in my own home. But this experience of hospitality can be a very good experience, because it is experience, you receive something very important from this stranger. Sometimes a stranger can be a messenger of God. I'm mostly working in order to reach every monastery, not only monasteries, because we try to reach also other kind of people, but I believe that we must have a very large platform. If we want to have this movement, we need many people, because what is in it is a question of changing a mentality in the church. I am very hopeful that if experiences of dialogue can go on in a good situation, in a good mood, not outside, not seen as something very dangerous, but inside the church, like we did in the Vatican, really at the heart of the church. If we can have there a good reflection, I am very hopeful that this can change and renew very much the church and make her much more faithful to the gospel. Now, seeing and admiring other religions, we become humble. And this is a very important sign, I think. I believe that the biggest grace of dialogue is an experience of evangelical poverty. We are too rich. We are too sure that we have everything. If we become more poor, according to the gospel, then we will be also able to listen, and we will be able to let us enrich by others, and there will be a very good meeting. And I think the experience of dialogue can make us more poor. It is essential.
Montserrat came into history some 1,000 years ago. The first notice we have from Montserrat, it's from the late 9th century, beginning of the 10th century, when the mountain with some chapels which were in it is given to an important Benedictine monastery at the time in northern Catalonia, Ripoll. At that time, just the northern part of Catalonia was a Christian nation, if we could say. The rest of it was still in the hands of the Muslims. Now we are about 90 monks. Then not only the community grew up, but also the pilgrims. That's the other side important of Montserrat. Very early, the little chapel was small, and a Romanesque church was built, and later, 400 years ago, the present-day church. And so both the community and the pilgrims were growing in number. The people who come to Montserrat are almost 2 million a year. Many tourists, but still many pilgrims. Local pilgrims, because Montserrat is a shrine which is very important for the church in Catalonia, but also pilgrims, real pilgrims from many other countries. Often we have in the worship readings in English, Italian, French, Japanese, Maltese, Czech, whatever, all kinds of languages. I had never thought of this dialogue with non-Christian monasticism, if I could say. And it came to me, I could say, by obedience, when in 1987 we were invited to welcome 2 Japanese Buddhist monks here. Together with, there were other Japanese monks coming to several monasteries in Europe. And the abbot asked me to take care of them. And when he told me, I was so afraid that he thought that maybe I was not the right person. But I said, well, just tell me what I should do. I had been interested in Christian ecumenism. I had been for 13 years with other monks of Montserrat in Jerusalem in an ecumenical institute there, living as a monastic community next to this Institute for Theological Studies, but the world of Eastern religions was just unknown to me. Then it was very interesting because I tried, of course, to prepare myself by reading things about the experience of the church in interreligious dialogue. But then when they came here, the thing just happened. We were fortunate, I think, to have here Hozumi Roshi and Sugimoto Genkai, were two excellent persons. Our community as a whole is not at all inclined to exotic things, I could say, but they made themselves so friendly, so delicate, so interested in our own life, that the 2 weeks that they spent here were just excellent. We had reserved for them a time every morning to have their zazen in a little chapel, which is the oldest chapel in Montserrat. We choose the chapel just because it's a quiet place, but the fact that it's the oldest place in the monastery impressed them very much. At the beginning, the first day, we were only maybe 3 or 4 doing zazen with them. By the end of their stay, we were 12 or 15, and I think that it was a special moment of communication with them, through silence, of course. One very nice thing that happened here, since it was during summertime that they were here in Montserrat, the time that we have for Lectio Divina, for spiritual reading after Vespers, it was still on daylight, and some monks will come out here in the garden and just read while walking. So they saw this from their window, and Hozumi Roshi came out to the garden doing also his own Lectio Divina, his own spiritual reading, if you could say. And he said that he was very impressed by this moment of quiet reading. The abbot also was walking there, and he was very much impressed by the depth of this moment at the end of the day, and as a spiritual reality of our community life, and also for the role of the abbot, how the abbot, he said, should be thinking about his community and thank God for the life of the community at this time. On the other side, about the role of the abbot, Sugimoto pointed out that he was very much impressed to see in breakfast we have it a self-service style, and so everyone comes and takes whatever he has to eat and goes to his place, and the abbot too as another one. And he was very much impressed by this, because among them the Roshi, or the superior, is somebody who is served by others, are revered very much. And of course we have respect for our abbot, but on the other side he is just one more of the community. So there is another style of relationship.
During their stay, they wanted to visit the hermit of Montserrat, Father Basil, who has lived high above the monastery for many years. And to get there, they had to climb up flights of steep stone stairs. Father Basil has had a deep interest in Eastern religions for a long time, and they were surprised and delighted to see on his wall the 10 ox-herding pictures which meant so much to them as Buddhists.
3 years later, a group of monks and nuns from Europe, we went to Japan. If after the experience of having them here, I was already in this world of interreligious dialogue, and I knew them in some way, on the other side, the question I put to myself is that here we were receiving them as a Christian community and offering them our Christian love, we would say. And there it will be the reverse, because in a monastery of theirs will be just a couple of us, and how this relationship will work, it was my question. In the end, also, it was rather easy. Even if the Buddhist Zen monasteries are very different from ours, because it's just a period of formation. They spend there maybe sometimes only 1 year, or 3, 4, 5 years, and then they go to serve in their temples. So they were rather young people, and we were monks having been in the monastery for more than 30 years. So, and also they had not been given any special preparation. They had done this on purpose to make it just happen, you know. And of course we tried to do everything as they were doing, not only the zazen, but the samu, the working, cleaning the garden, and their worship, if we could say. This is Mampuguji, the monastery where I was. It's a special tradition, Obaku tradition, very Chinese, and has a special stress on what we could call worship in the morning and in the evening, sharing in their life very simply, and of course putting all our interest in discovering their soul. But immediately, among a few of them, 4 or 5, there was a very deep interest on our Christian monastic life. So this created really a deep relationship. Since then, 6 years have elapsed. I think that it's very difficult that they will ever meet again. But for me, the personal relationship with these persons, and I remember some words of the one or the other, it's something very important. Especially after having been in Japan, in their own ambience, I had the feeling that we should take our spiritual life and experience and their spiritual life and experience as a whole, not just to single out one aspect. And in this respect, I think that their spiritual experience is zazen, but it's other things also. And our life has also many aspects. And actually, what came to my mind to relate, it's two different things. Their experience in zazen with our experience in the divine office. Saint Benedict says that when we pray the office, mens concordet voci, our mind should be one thing with our voice, which is very interesting because it's not the other way. I mean, it's not that we say what is in our mind, but that we make our mind agree with the words of the Psalms and so on. And this is an experience of unity, of course, in ourselves. And it came to me that this was a similar experience to this experience of unity that they seek and find through zazen and other practices of their life. So that I think that we should discover and deepen the similarities in our two ways of life, not necessarily in the same forms. And then that their experience of zazen helps me in my experience of the divine office. And I think that maybe it could be also the other way around. Each time that I came into relationship with them, exposed to them, both here and in Japan, as I said, I was asking myself, how should I live my spiritual experience so that they may mean something for them. And in the same way as thinking about the experience I was doing with them in Zazen, I thought about this experience of praying worship with the mind made one with the words as an experience of unity. Another element of Christian monastic tradition came to my mind when I was in Japan. There is this saying of one of the Desert Fathers who says, all this speaking always of an older age which was better than the present one. He said in that other period when I was in Sete, our main work was the spiritual work, and handwork was something secondary. Whereas now we have reversed the order, and the secondary thing has taken the first place, and the main thing has taken the secondary place. This in Greek, it's a playing of words, ergon and parergon. Of course, in the Oboku tradition, every morning, very early in the morning, we were waken up by a monk running around and singing. Of course, we couldn't understand the Japanese, but we could have a translation afterwards, saying that life and death is what is important, and we should wake up and get our attention on the important things and let other things just pass, So I think that this centering all our life in the spiritual experience, that's very important. And that's something that they taught me. And my responsibility is to make my own life also respond to this, be so intense that it may talk to them.
So my name is Alberto Quattrucci and belong to the community of San Egidio just from the beginning of the community itself. The community of San Egidio was born in Rome in 1968, and then it was 28 years ago. Yeah, this year we celebrate the 28th anniversary of the community. So, and the community was born starting from a few people. It was a small group of students of the high school, 17, 18, no more. And then it started just from three pillars, three fundaments of the community. The first one was the gospel. The gospel means on that time a sort of gospel discovered again after the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council finished in 65. So, and then we used on that time, starting our meetings, reading the gospel, listening to the gospel, and trying to put in practice the gospel through the fraternal life, the communion together, and then through the commitments with the poor. Then this was the second pillar of the community. These commitments with the poor, and on that time in Rome, because in Rome the community was born, in Rome the poverty was very large, large and deep. You can imagine nowadays Rome has changed also the face of Rome, but on that time there were a lot of suburbs around the city, full of people, immigrants from the south of Italy itself. They were from the region on the south. From the poverty, they went in the large city, in the big city like Rome, to find a job, to find the best life. And it was a sort of barracks. There were a sort of group, a large group of barracks, when the people and the children didn't reach a good level in the school. They were stopped every year in the school because they spoke dialect and not Italian. And we start helping the children in the barracks around Rome, and to help also these people every week. Especially in the Saturday afternoon. We spent our free time because we were students. You can imagine that on that time we were pressed from the study and so. But our Saturday afternoon, our free time was spent all for these poor people. This was the second pillar, and then this pillar of, with the poor, the service to the poor, increased more and more in the years again. And then the third was a sort of friendship, but not a friendship in the superficial meaning, but deep friendship, a sort of challenge to the individualism of our society. So this friendship means to have a house open to all the people who knock to the door. And then we realized that this third pillar of friendship, mostly from the 73, 5 years ago, the start of the community, when we arrived in San Egidio, because in the beginning the community was called only community among us, but from 73 we took the name of San Egidio from the church that the diocese gave us for the prayer, the evening prayer. So we are from 73 in San Egidio. Is a small church in the very heart center of Rome, in Trastevere. And from that time we opened the church, reopened because it was closed for 3 years. We reopened the church and we started the evening prayer. Every evening at 8:30 we gather together and we pray, singing together the psalms, reading the gospel and praying together. That's the heart, that is the heart of the community. Okay, the first things was that starting from San Egidio in 73, we had a house, and then when you have a house, you can open the door. Otherwise, if you don't have, you can't open. So this was important. I mean, like our identity, not only in Rome, but in Italy, and then in Europe, in Africa, in Latin America, and this, our identity is spread out through the meetings, the encounters with other people coming in Rome. This means that the communities and the communities of San Egidio, born in Europe, in Africa, in Latin America, they were born also through this encounter in Rome, through the prayer, through the meetings in San Egidio. This was also the case of the meetings with some poors coming from the Third World, from the Northern Africa, from the Middle East countries, and so, and then from the Eastern countries as well. That means that we met through these people not only the body necessities, the body needs, but also some spiritual needs, some spiritual values, and that was the meetings with the first meeting with other religions. This was 20 years ago, more or less. Then we, from this meeting, started our interest to know the other religions, and to realize a sort of dialogue, not only theoretical, but also practice, also full of friendship, full of interest for the others. Then we started a sort of links with more or less 20, 25 countries, also using the summertime to spend our time to visit these communities of other religions. Then, an important passage, important moment, start point, was in 1986, when the Holy Father promoted this meeting in Assisi, which was the first interreligious meeting promoted in this level of prayer, but to be together to pray, and not to pray together. This was the difference, because to avoid every syncretism, and it was very appreciated from us and from all. On this time, we decided to continue in the spirit of dialogue, of friendship, the meeting of Assisi. We founded in '88 the International Association People and Religions, born from the community of San Egidio itself, and was born to realize every year these interreligious meetings for peace. Then we had realized in '87, '88 in Rome, then '89 in Warsaw, in a difficult but important moment of passage in this Polish situation. Then in '90 in Bari, in Italy again. Then '91 Malta, Brussels, '93 Milan, Assisi again, then the last one in Florence. This year we are going to organize the 10th anniversary of these meetings in Rome between the 7th and the 10th of October '96. Sometimes we used to think that, okay, if we, as a Christian, as a Catholic, are so open to the others, why they are not so the same to us? but we have to understand that after many centuries of division, of hate, of different words, it's not so easy to realize a dialogue, a deep dialogue only in 40, 50 years, because the dialogue between the Catholic Church, you can consider the Second Vatican Council as a start of a new age of dialogue. It's a too short time. We have to work again, we have to go on together again, we have to talk about it in 100 years or something like that, then we can realize a good point. So, but it's a sort of progression in the dialogue this year. We have to recognize it. In the beginning, we didn't know each other so well. The best result was the tolerance to the others. It was a good result, because thinking to the past, and what was impossible to tolerate the other. Our first teacher, in some sense, was the Second World War. Teacher in the negative sense, but we have to learn from it. Around this central moment of these meetings, the meetings are long, about four days yearly, and then around the principal moment, the heart of the meeting, that is the day of prayer for peace, they started a sort of conference, or study conference, round tables, something like that, where the religious leaders used to sit around the table to speak to the people, and then to face the problems of the contemporary world together. But in the beginning, we had to recognize that it was only sort of auto-introducing, auto-presentation of the religions. Okay, I'm a Buddhist, and so in my faith, the peace means so and so and so. I'm a Christian, and so and so, like a parallel speeches. But going up along these meetings, along this pilgrimage, we discovered that it was possible to discover a common language. And it was a very important point. Starting from 90, more or less, in Bari, we realized a very interesting conference, study conference. And then we realized that it was possible to discover this common language, this point in common, not the same point, but in common means that we're like a bridge to understand each other. The prayer was one, but the most important was the decision to face the real problems of the world. I mean, in facing the war, it's possible to find many points in common between the religions, to face the poverty in the world, to face all the problems of this level. So, last year, just to give you another example, in Florence we realized a very interesting study conference. More than 120, 130 speeches, very interesting, around the most important problems of the contemporary world. The problems of the Africa, the problem of the Latin America. I mean, these hot areas in the world. The problem of the poverty. Was the reason, I have to say, in facing the poverty? Was the purpose, was the way? And then the problem of the point of the ecumenism. Also the inter-Christian dialogue is very important in these meetings. I mean, between the Catholic, the different called Protestant, evangelical churches, Reformed churches, and so, and the Orthodox as well. Normally in these meetings, these yearly meetings for peace, we discovered that the difference is really, really, really small between the Christians. It's only an historical difference as well, but really it's not so large. During the day of prayer itself, we used to spend 1 hour for the prayers for peace in different places according to each religions. Then the Christians had to stay together for the ecumenical prayer. And then the Christian, facing the other religions, discovered that they are the same faith, they are the same religion. The difference is really, in the other sense, is a sort of richness to have different traditions together, but just one community. So, and sometimes some people thought, I mean, in the press or in different experience, that this kind of dialogue is not scientific dialogue. It's not so scientific dialogue. It's not so theoretical dialogue. It's not so theological dialogue. So we studied theology, of course, and then we studied also the theology of the other religions. But the problem is that the theology, without friendship, without human interest, is nothing. You can remain stopped in one point of theology, of difference of theology, also 10, 20, 30 years without interest to overcome it. And the interest starts from the friendship, from the common war against the war. From these in yearly meetings for peace, started a lot of initiatives, different initiatives, in different levels, daily level, local level, international level, and so on. So we consider these meetings as another value of these meetings as a sort of laboratory for peace. I give you just two examples between among the lot of examples. But the first is a sort of daily example. We have in Trastevere, very close to the community, we opened 8 years ago a large place of a sub kitchen for all the immigrants coming in Rome. Then we have daily something about 1,800 to 900 people coming in the sub kitchen from the 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the night. Without a collaboration, it's not only collaboration of Catholic people, also lay people, but also people belong to other confession or other religions as well. Without this good collaboration, it really is impossible to realize it in the full sense. And so we discovered a good and interesting collaboration in helping the poverty, in helping the people in need. And that means not only to realize the project, but also to know in the deeper way each other, working together. Another more international example is this of the Mozambique in Africa. After 17 years of war, we realized in 1992 the peace talk and the negotiation for peace, and then was signed the peace in San Egidio in October 92 in Mozambique. It was a very, very hard war between the Renamo, so was the rebels, and then the Frelimo was the government recognized them. So it was possible also through the religious dialogue there, the collaboration for peace, because with the evangelical church there, but also with Islamic people there, it was possible to overcome all the barriers, all the walls, and to realize a sort of trust in the peace. We started the community in San Salvador after the killing of Monsignor Romero, because after the killing of Monsignor Romero we decided to realize something, and because we knew before some people coming from Salvador, and we asked to go to do something. This is very different compared to the community in Rome. The service to the poor, for instance, with the children, just to give you a very small example. Here in Rome, okay, we will help the children, the gypsies, children of gypsies for the school, lack support. They realize the real school, otherwise, because they don't have school, so a different situation of the society and so. You can imagine the situation is different. It's not a model of San Egidio, it's one spirit of San Egidio. And then everyone can live this spirit, everyone can belong to the community of San Egidio.